Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about Green Lantern First Flight. This movie came out in 2009. It was the fifth DC animated original movie at that time and everything. Boy, what a great time to be a comic book fan. We had so much good stuff coming out at that time. The Iron Man movie, I think, came out around that time. The Dark Knight stuff was going on, and you had all these DC animated movies. And this was the fifth movie at that time. Now we have a total of 60 animated movies in this whole DC animated original movie, group and everything. The stuff that involves like the Batman animated series, stuff like that don't count. But yeah, 60 animated movies, and this was the fifth. Now the 60th one has not come out yet. That's Batman Nightfall. That has not come out yet. I forgot that Watchmen and Aztec Batman came out. I haven't seen those. But anyway, boy, the fifth movie. So I really love this movie. In my opinion, this is the best Green Lantern movie, period. It's way better than that Ryan Reynolds, live action movie. But to be fair to that movie got a lot of criticism. I remember hearing about the criticism. A few years back, I decided to watch the movie, and while it's not great, it's not horrible either. Yes, the suit looks like crap. Yes, there are way too many jokes in there. And yeah, they could have done a way better job with the movie, but all in all, it wasn't horrible. But it was bad enough to get the animated series canceled and stuff. Because yeah, there was a Green Lantern animated series, which was really good. I highly recommend that show. Also, there is another Green Lantern animated movie. Actually, there's two. I'm trying to think of the other one. The other one's an anthology. I forgot the name of that one. I'm looking it up real fast. Yeah, I can't. Oh, here it is. Green Lantern Emerald Knights. And that was a really good movie, and it was the 11th one that came out in 2011. It's an anthology. It's not a sequel to this movie. Some people think it is. It is not. Because of the simple fact, even though the animation is the same except for some slight differences, the voice cast has completely changed. And some characters are not in prison that should be in prison. And there's a character who's alive that should be dead. And so actually there's a couple of them that should be dead and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's not a sequel. They just reuse the same templates, which I hate when they do that crap, but it saves money. But I remember when this movie first came out, and I remember watching the things that are the first look of it, and they explain why they made it. They wanted to make this a space cop opera type movie, because Green Lantern in animation movies was in Justice League New Frontier, and that movie had Green Lantern on Earth the entire time, and you never really saw him do no space stuff. So they wanted to change this. That's where Green Lantern should be, space and everything, And so because there's never really been no live action movie at that time, and the only other Green Lantern we ever saw in animation was in cartoons on television shows, which is most people's first introduction of the Green Lantern. That was my first introduction with the Justice League animated series, Jon Stewart. And so I didn't even know Hal Jordan existed until Justice League Unlimited. And I remember seeing him thinking, who the heck is this? And I remember hearing the commentary and stuff from like Bruce Timm talking about how people were really pissed off it wasn't Hal, and they was really pissed off it wasn't Cal and everything, and they didn't want John at that time like the fans, and but Bruce Timm stuck to his guns and kept Jon Stewart because he is a fan of his. Plus, the show needed diversity, and he's a black character and stuff. And I just remember thinking, wow, John's so cool, but who the heck is this Hal guy? And I looked at older animation of him, like, with the white gloves and it's just like, who the heck is this dude and stuff? And this old fashioned 60s, 70s hairstyle. So when they started the whole DC animated original movies, Hal Jordan, was front and center of a lot of those projects and stuff. And Jon Stewart just kind of disappears. And Kyle Rayner never got no love. And so, like, they really been pushing Hal to the front. And so, he's always been voiced by a different voice actor in each new movie he's in. However, whenever they do like a second movie with the same animation or an actual sequel, they always get Nathan Fillion, which a lot of people always wanted as, Hal Jordan because of the way he looks, the hair, and the voice. And I like Nathan Fillion's voice. The only problem I have is that I hate when they recast with him because I get used to whoever this new actor is, and the voice matches the animation perfectly. And then all of a sudden they just like get rid of this new person and they get Nathan Fillion, and Nathan Fillion's voice doesn't match the way the animation looks. And that always bugs me and stuff, and they always do it. Now, this time around, the person voicing Hal Jordan is Christopher Maloney. He's best known for, what's that show called? Something SUV. Law and Order, that's it. I personally never watched that show, but I didn't even recognize him at first when they did the first look at the movie and stuff like that, because this was like 20 something years ago, and like he was wearing a straw farmer's hat that looked like a cowboy hat, and so he kept throwing me off. I'm like, who the heck is that? I could not recognize him and stuff. And so, but he did a phenomenal job as like Hal Jordan, and he's one of my favorite like Hal Jordan voices and stuff. Yeah, Nathan Fillion did a really good job for the second movie that the animation took from this movie, but I really like Christopher's voice like a lot. He had kind of like that exuberant, kind of like young, but kind of cockiness to him and stuff like that, He was just like really, really great. And it's too bad he couldn't come back for Emerald Knight, but Nathan did do a really good job for Emerald Knight. I just wish they would have used different animation and stuff, which, Bruce Timm said that, like, they try to use different animations for all these projects, but apparently they didn't do it for that one. Victor Garber, he plays that of Sinestro. He's best known for Alias, and, like, he was even in Legends of Tomorrow, so he's very, in the whole DC properties and stuff like that. Sorry about that, I had to clear my throat. Michael Madsen, may he rest in peace. I remember him from Kill Bill, and he voices Kilowog. Trisha Helfer, she plays that Boudica, and I think I remember seeing her in Van Helsing the last season. I think she might have been in that Battlestar Galactica show. I'm not 100% sure. And so with this voice cast, Andrea Romano, she did what she normally does and puts everybody in the same room together so they can play off each other, which was really great. The movie was directed by Lauren Montgomery, and she directed the Wonder Woman, the first animated movie, and she co-directed The Dark Knight Returns. She's also directed a couple of more, but she's mostly best known for like storyboard building and stuff. And she's a really good artist. Like, if you go on her Instagram page, she's worked with Avatar Last Airbender. She draws a lot of those characters, and she draws like a lot of DC characters. She says she got her influence from like Disney movies and stuff. But like, I remember, I can't remember which one is what. I would listen to commentary by her on one of these movies and talked about like, Sailor Moon transformation. Like, because when you watch this, Hal Jordan has a very Magic Girl esque, like Sailor Moon type transformation and everything. Now, the animation is just breathtakingly beautiful. Some very sharp lines, some very bold, bright colors and stuff. Like, I really love the animation on this. How Jordan kind of resembles that of Christopher Maloney's face a little bit. They did take liberties with like how these alien like designs, especially their faces look completely redesigned from like the comics, and especially what Bruce Timm team did with the Justice League cartoon when the Green Lantern showed up there. And like, I just love like all the individual like lantern costumes and stuff, and how their suits don't look like spandex or nothing like that. It looks like armor, or like rubber armor and stuff. Like, and also like metal plated armor. I just love that so much. I'm also glad they didn't give Hal his like, classic like uniform with like the white gloves and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's iconic and stuff. Well, you'll see it in the Justice League, like 2 Earth movie and stuff like that. I just really like this. Like, it's a really good updated version of like his costume. Now, I think the live action Green Lantern movie that came out in like, 2011, and you can tell they took inspiration from this movie with the designs of the costumes. Just still screw that up with the CGI and stuff like that. I really like how like the Guardians look. I was taken back by their new outfits in the Justice League cartoon. They wore like black and red robes. That was very striking. The white and red robes don't look as striking, but it feels more old school comic booky, you know what I'm saying? I do notice that, well, a lot of these aliens, they gave them really giant heads, which is like really funny. But they didn't give like Sinestro or like Abin Sur like, a giant head, which they normally have in like the comics. Which I'm really glad they did not. I hate Sinestro's giant head. They gave it to him in that live action movie. It did not work. Not everything that, happens in the comic translate well on screen, not even animation. And so, I do love how in these earlier days they used to give all these movies their own art design, stuff like that. But they did copy this legit design for the Emerald Knight movie. Just tweaked it a little bit and tweaked the colors a little bit. And like, it was just really weird hearing new voices for everybody and stuff. I really wish they could have kept these voices, but sadly they didn't. But I am glad they gave them all these new redesigns and stuff. There's only been like a few Green Lantern like projects and stuff, There's only been 4 movies, 3 of them being animated, and then 1 animated television series. Basically, after that live action movie, it kind of put a halt on Green Lantern. Like, you have this movie, and I forget what year Emerald Knight came out. And even though Emerald Knight is very good, it didn't make that much money on DVD sales. It was an anthology, so everything's like broken up, and then the present day stuff is very broken up, and the present day stuff wasn't really all that interesting. but the flashback anthology stuff was. And so, like, then of course, there's a live action movie, and then they had a television series. And the television series, which I renewed, go watch that, that was very, really good. But it got canceled due to two, like, main reasons. One, low toy sales, and two, the live action movie. And then it took, like, feel like near 15, 20 years later for them to come out with a new project, and it completely bombed. Like, it was the one with Jon Stewart, and they had Hal in there, but they did, like, turn Hal evil like he did in the comics with the whole, like, multiple rings things. And and a lot of people, I think what was it, Polaris or something like that his name was, or Parallax, people just did not like that, like, storyline in the comics, and they certainly did not like it in animation. And the reason for that, from what I can gather, is that Hal is just very beloved by, like, the fandom. He was the second Green Lantern in the comics during the Silver Age. Alan Scott was during the Golden Age. Alan Scott's ring was in, like, magic. And I think wood, like, affected it, the ring and stuff like that. And then so, like, they decided to change everything up and then bring on Hal. And Hal was like a test pilot and everything. And the thing about him, I remember when I was watching the, first looks of the movie, this one dude who was bald with glasses put his hand on his head, and he's all like, Hal was the best depiction of a cop that there was and everything. Like, he's supposed to be kind of like this perfect person, like, he is that ultimate hero. Like, he will, he has, like, impeccable, like, willpower to will, like, that ring, and he's all about truth and justice and stuff like that. Now, he's not perfect. I'm not familiar with him, familiar with him, because I don't read comics, and they also didn't explore him, like, in the Justice League cartoon stuff with that cameo. But even though they do change people's personalities and stuff, like, he seemed like a wholesome person. But, like, I know he's not perfect because he can be a bit of a jerk. And not only that, but there's something going on between him and Star Sapphire. They dated, and she became part of their core and everything. And I don't know what the relationship was about them, but I just remember in this other movie, she said Hal broke her heart, and, like, that seems to be everything that goes on with her. He never dare, what I'm saying? He's always protecting, like, Earth or protecting the galaxy, and I guess she felt jilted or something like that. But for the most part, he is a very beloved, like, character and stuff. And I like this movie that they took him off Earth and put him in outer space. It is a huge space, like, saga opera type thing, what I'm saying? Like, here's this dude from Earth, and he doesn't know nothing about space, but then here comes this alien who crashes on the planet and gives him the ring and everything. And he took it upon himself to, like, just, like, fight crime on Earth. And then the Guardians called, and he just got thrust into, like, this completely different universe and this completely different world set. And he's this outsider trying his best to look in while also trying his best to be a hero and protect people and stuff. And the odds are against him because his mentor in this movie is his nemesis, his arch enemy from, like, the comics and everything. And so he knows that, something's wrong with Sinestro, and he's a little rough around the edges, but he just doesn't trust this guy. His instinct tells him there is something wrong with him. And the thing is, the Lanterns are like this military police force. And here's this test pilot who's having to act like a detective and a cop and everything, And he's gonna have to bust one of his own. And I can see why so many people like him and stuff. And like I said before, I really like his design. They gave him strong cheekbones and stuff like that. They gave him his cowlick hairstyle, from the comics, which is very outdated. And they gave him his mask with the white eyes, but they still gave him pupils. They're just outlined blue, which was really clever and stuff. Then there is Sinestro, and the only thing I knew about him was from the Justice League cartoon, where he's really evil and he hates Green Lanterns, but we never got to see him fight Hal in that show. And like I said before, they redesigned him taller, stuff like that. And I'm so glad they didn't give him that black and purple looking outfit that they gave him from like the older look. I always hated that look. And so in this version, he's actually a Green Lantern and one of a hierarchy type lantern. He's very well respected. People look up to him and everything. And this really shocked and surprised me because I only know him from the Justice League cartoon and he was evil. And I knew he had a yellow power ring. I never knew he was a Green Lantern. Now here's the thing. I don't know when exactly this was revealed in the comics. I don't know if this was revealed back in the day in the comics or in the newer comics, or I honestly don't even know if they just did it for this movie and in the comics were kind of like, hey, that's kind of cool. Let's borrow from that. Because when you watch the first look at this thing, they say in our version, he's actually a lantern and he's the mentor of Hal, which makes me think this never happened before. So if the comics took inspiration from this movie, once again, Bruce Timm and his team need to work for the DCU, because I don't know what the heck James Gunn is doing. I do not see that man's vision whatsoever. And so Sinestro, he's not an outright villain yet. He's mostly a cop who is corrupt. And the thing is, he actually wants peace in the universe, but he goes about it in a very brutal way. See, he feels that the Guardians have become soft, have become weak. They become too nice. There's too many villains in the galaxy causing chaos, and he feels throwing them in jail is not the right solution, but flat out killing them and everything. So he takes it upon himself to forge his own Lantern Corps and everything away from that of the Guardians. But he needs a strong power source, which turns out to be the yellow element, something the Guardians lost and everything, and something Abin Sur was looking for. So behind the scenes this entire time, he actually has been working with the bad guys and to acquire all this and stuff like that. Albin Sur actually found out, and that's when we get to his somewhat origin, normally what's in the comics. And so Sinestro, like I said before, he doesn't turn out straight up evil yet, but he's working his way up there, and he is willing to commit genocide, which he does in this movie. This dude kills hundreds of lanterns. But it's not necessarily him that's going out straight up killing and shooting them. It is the yellow battery source. That's his ultimate weapon that destroys the green battery and everything. And when that happens, all the lanterns that are out in space flying around, they can't shield up. And they suffocate and everything, and then the rings return back to Oa, and you just see dozens upon dozens rings just fall down. You're like, my God, this dude committed genocide and everything. It's insane and crazy. But the power does corrupt him eventually because he wants a new world order and everything. And he's willing to kill whoever it takes just to accomplish that. Now, Albin Sur, they redesigned him once like everybody else in this movie, right? And every time we see this dude, I swear to God, it's always the same thing. He shows up on Earth. He tells the ring to go look for a new like lantern, and then he dies. Like, this dude never has the greatest luck. Thank God in Emerald Knight we get to see more of him. And they even explain in this movie why in the comics he was flying a spaceship if he can just use his ring. It's always been debated in the comics. Maybe his ring was out of power, but if it was out of power, then how was Hal able to use it? Why is he in a spaceship? Well, he's undercover and he steals a spaceship from the bad guys and he goes to Earth. And that's the greatest explanation of them all. Now, we never get to see his actual lantern battery that all lanterns have and keep in a pocket dimension. That would have been nice to see in this movie, or some type of explanation, but we get to see it in Emerald Knight. Kilowog is a brute. He is a drill sergeant. He's tough, he's rough around the edges, and he doesn't take no BS from nobody, and he hates Hal guts because, like, in order for Hal to get that ring, he had to take it off another lantern, and the other lantern was a friend of his and died. So he feels that people are like posers and stuff like that, who haven't trained and who wasn't recruited by like the Guardians and stuff like that. After a while, Hal does like earn his respect, but only because he saved his life and stuff. Boudica surprised the crap out of me. Normally when I saw the Green Lanterns and like, what's his name? Bruce Timm's Justice League cartoon, there were never no females around. It was always the men, but they had that one female who was the girlfriend of John Stewart in the comics. But this time they have like a new female, and she's slightly colored different than what she is in the comics. And so in this movie, she just seems like a nice, like relaxed, calm type person who befriends Hal and is nice to him when everybody else is rude. And so like, then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in a huge twist, she's working with Sinestro, and she tries to kill Kilowog and that of like Hal. I did not see this coming whatsoever. There was no hint, no clue, no nothing. And I can't find nothing in the comics that would suggest that like she would turn and everything. This is completely new. It might have pissed some of her fans off, but I have no idea. The Guardians, so they are the creators of the Lantern Corps. There was no mention of the Manhunters in this, and it really pissed me off. I wish the Manhunters could have been like the villains in the second movie, like they were in a Justice League cartoon, but sadly they were not. Because even though the anthology thing was cool, I'd rather just have like a straightforward like movie. So they are as old as time. They have observed so much, and they have decided in order to keep the peace, they need like a force to do that. The Manhunters, were robots, but they couldn't like think and like on their own and have empathy and stuff like that. So they needed organics, and they forged that of like the rings and all this other stuff. They are the ones who lost the yellow element, and so it's up to like Sinestro to try to find it, but of course he uses it for like his power instead. They are very wise, very logical, but there are some that kind of think like Sinestro, and we don't necessarily see one turn, but we see one that's very grumpy. But in the comics, he actually turned. And so there's only one who really likes humans for the most part. He doesn't think they're that bad, and he's kind of more friendly towards that of like Hal. I think that's Gant too, or something like that. But other than that, we don't really know much about them. The pacing is amazing in this movie. It never stalls. There are never no quiet moments. It just like, it's not always intense, but it has a nice, relaxing flow to it. When it does get intense, this is when there's a lot of great action. Lauren Montgomery is a very good director. she's always good at like the flow, you know what I'm saying? To where you never get bored and you never get tired, and it's never rushed. That's the thing I like about her. Action wise, she can do some really good action. She doesn't linger too long on fight scenes. She doesn't cut away that much, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes I wish it could be a little bit more longer, like Sam Liu, but not overdone like sometimes Sam Liu does, you know what I'm saying? But Sam Liu does a great job of action. He's more like choreographed and like hand-to-hand combat action, where she's not, but she know how to utilize that hero's strength, you know what I'm saying? It would just be nice if there was more slugging and stuff like that in her movies. But like, like I guess she's not like too adverse in like action, but like nevertheless she does a really good job. And the animation department, they really did a good job with making this look very, very cinematic looking. I love how like in the animation it's not too anime looking. Like in the earlier movies, they pretty much, adhere to that of the animation in like the Western style in America. In the later movies, they started to go a little bit too anime-ish in like their faces and in some of their like body movements and stuff, especially in their faces, especially the New 52 movies. Everybody had that weird kind of pointy chin shape, like anime looking face. I did not like that. If I want to watch anime, I would go watch anime, you know what I'm saying? So like I was not particularly a fan of like that new 52 style that they started doing later on, but nevertheless, like these are like really, really good. And so, like I said before, it's basically just like how, what I'm saying, he's testing out like a simulator. Then, like, the rain grabs him. He meets Alvin. Like, he gets destroyed. The Guardians, they come. They're not happy that he has the ring. They take him to Oa. He gets tested out by Sinestro. Sinestro wants to test him out and mentor him because he likes the idea that humans are like more violent and stuff, and he needs somebody else on his side along with Boudica and everything. And so they go to like this like nightclub, and like they're looking for like Kendra Rowe and there. First they're looking for Kitch, so then they get Kendra Rowe. And so basically it's just like a huge battle, and the battles are done, like I said, very, very well. You're always engaged, they're very energetic, but this is when Hal can start to see that there's something wrong with Sinestro. He's willing to torture a woman with this kind of like ball spear thing that's kind of like a drug. He could care less if like civilians get hurt. And even some of the lanterns can see it, but they kind of dismissed it by saying, he's stressed out. Anyway, so Sinestro's following one lead after another. So he's trying to find that yellow element. He runs into Kendra Rowe, who in this version is like a warlord and everything. And he's completely redesigned because he's trying to find the location of the yellow element. He kills him and he frames Hal. Hal gets imprisoned because of this, and Sinestro goes to the weaponers where he gets like, the yellow element and the power ring. And I love the way the weaponers talk. Like, this is movie level acting in my opinion. This is movie acting storytelling in my opinion. So after like, Boudica tries to kill like Kilowog and Hal and everything, the others come in and they talk to the lanterns, and then Sinestro shows up after he killed like Tomar-Re and all that. Like, oh my god, you killed him. And then this is when the huge battle happens between Sinestro and all the like lanterns and stuff, but Hal does not have his ring. This is to show just how strong Hal is, that even the Lantern Corps and the Guardians cannot destroy him and that giant weapon of his. Once they see the genocide and everything, they all give up, except for Hal, who is trying to get his ring charged up. but the green element in the battery is like busted, and he does something like crazy. He punches it, and there's a crack in it, and he absorbs
energy.
so much of the green energy. He became like living energy himself, even to the point where the Guardians, they couldn't detect what he was and everything. And so with this newfound power, he fought Sinestro in the giant yellow battery machine thing. And just the way he destroyed it was so amazing. Because of course the color yellow affects the green like spectrum of like the rings. Something I never knew in a Justice League cartoon because they didn't specify that. And you see the ring work on yellow stuff except for that yellow jello and Justice League Unlimited, and that didn't make no sense. And Bruce Timm's all like, well, everybody got mad at us for like letting yellow like pass like not be affected by like the ring, so we did this. It'll be funny and stuff. And just the way he destroyed that giant weapon was cool. He just gets a bunch of like asteroids and I guess moons and asteroid planets and just crushes the crap out of it. But what I didn't understand is that when the yellow element was destroyed, why did Sinestro still have his uniform on? But he was unable to use his ring. So he was just gonna take like, he had a little bit juice left in it and he was just gonna take like one of the green rings until Kilowatt crushes like, his hand. But I love the idea of him becoming living like energy. Like, why in the world didn't the movie just do this? Yeah, it would have been a cheat and a copy, but who cares? You know what I'm saying? We get to hear the oath, and then he talks about how he's heading back home because he has to get to his girlfriend and his old job. And we never got a proper sequel to this movie, which was quite a shame. But I do like to think that somehow that Emerald Knight is kind of a sequel to this, but it really isn't. It truly is not. Like, there are characters that are still alive in that. There are characters who are not in prison. And it's just a completely different movie. But like I said before, this is the greatest Green Lantern movie ever. You can watch this free on YouTube, maybe also Amazon Prime. I think David Zaslav got rid of it on HBO Max, I think. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.